A very good Friday evening to all of you watching Rwanda Television News. It is time for news in English presented to you by me, Friday James. Now we start off with the headlines. World Bank has extended a loan of 15 billion Rwandan francs to the government of Rwanda, which will be used in supporting centers of excellence in universities. Workers at Gisozi Carpentry in Gasabo district rant their frustrations due to lack of health insurance in their work. Rwanda Revenue Authority says a plan is on the way for all traders to give receipts using electronic billing machines. Elsewhere, unemployment of Niger's youth is forcing them to cross the Mediterranean Sea in search of green pastures in Europe. Welcome once again. I am Friday James. Now, starting off with our local stories today, the World Bank has given Rwanda 15.3 billion Rwandan francs to support centers of excellence in Rwanda's institutions of higher education and strengthen their capacity to deliver quality postgraduate education. The country will be able to increase the number of master graduates and doctorate holders recognized globally. This is a story filed by Mutesi Teopista.
At the signing event of an International Development Association credit agreement of $20 million, an equivalent of 15.3 billion francs, the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Ambassador Claver Gatete, signed on behalf of the government of Rwanda, while the World Bank country manager Yasser El Gamal represented the bank. 4 centers of excellence will be in the University of Rwanda's 3 main colleges. The College of Business and Economics will host the African Center of Excellence for Data Sciences, while the College of Education will be home to the African Center of Excellence for Innovative Teaching and Learning Mathematics and Science. Yasser El Gamal remarked that the development will see the number of PhD holders in Rwanda increase in the near future.
A few years from now, your brothers and sisters and sons and daughters will be very well recognized and proud if they have, a master's degree or a PhD from one of these centers. This is really the hope, is that these centers become like a hub for that particular activity in the entire continent, and I should also hope later for the whole world, so that, it would become a trademark that if you have a graduate degree from such a center.
Finance and Economic Planning Minister Claver Gatete said the funds will enable the country produce intellectuals capable to do globally accepted researches.
We are very happy that among other things that we've been talking about development, whether it is the statistics, whether it is the IT, whether it is the energy, agriculture, this time we can add more value. By focusing on how to develop the capacity which increases the productivity. And one of the things that has been lacking is really going deep into the research part so that we understand whether what we are doing, we can add more productivity in the process.
The College of Science and Technology will host 2 African Centers of Excellence, namely the African Center of Excellence of Energy for Sustainable Development and the Center of Excellence in Internet of Things, or IoTs. The College of Science and Technology will also host an international multidisciplinary center that combines expertise in statistics, economics, business, computer science, and engineering to use big data and data analytics.
Now, people working in the Gisozi Carpentry and Steel Workshop have decried the lack of health insurance, although officials of Adargwa cooperative in which they are members say they are still registering operators to better secure the insurance. Those affected say this had led them to paying their own medical bills. In the meantime, Grace Magambo reports.
The cooperative of artisans say their trades are not without their hazards, and the lack of health insurance is a grave inconvenience to their well-being. My injury is minor compared to those that others have endured. Some people have lost whole hands. There's nowhere to report your grievance. I lost a finger. They paid the initial 25,000 francs for medical expenses because I didn't have Mitwell. But since then, I have incurred added expenses amounting to 84,400 Rwandan francs. I had an accident. A nail entered my eye and I ended up paying for my own medical expenses. If they had covered it, I would have been able to go abroad and get a transplant. These members of the cooperative say they are open to receiving their monthly wages after health insurance premiums have been deducted. The amount is not an issue. Even if you earn 5,000 Rwandan francs and they tell you that 1,000 is going to be deducted for health insurance, it would be helpful. People spend all they earn, and in case of accidents, there's nothing to spare, which affects one's well-being. We're getting older, but we want the younger people in our churches to be able to talk to their employers and tell them of the challenges we encounter in this line of work. Officials of the Adara cooperative that manages the center, however, says member registration is still ongoing, which is the reason for the delayed issuing of health insurance. This has been in the works for a while now, and we hope it can be complete within the next 2 months. After registration is complete for all members under respective skilled trades, we can then establish a strategic plan for occupational safety. The over 500 workers at the center located in Gisozi says besides lack of health insurance, they are also faced with inadequate safety gear, which the cooperative says should be resolved soon.
Now, a man wearing a DR Congo military uniform was killed Wednesday night at the Rwanda Defense Forces base in Rukokosel, Rubavu sector found in Rubavu district. Now, on Friday, the body was shown to the team from the expanded joint verification mechanism. We have the report.
The DR Congo soldier entered the Rwandan territory illegally. The militant was shot after he tried to forcefully enter the RDF base in Rutagara village, Rukoko sector in Rubavu district. Captain Nzabarinda Gaspard, in charge of Rutagara base, narrated to reporters that the guard at the base had, prior to shooting, asked the DR Congo soldier to stop and identify himself. The orders he refused and continued moving toward his direction, prompting the shooting. The incident took place on the 15th of June 2016 at around 8 p.m. A soldier passed on the sides of the RDF base. The RDF soldier on guard for 3 times asked him to stop but could not collaborate and continued walking toward him. That's when he decided to cock the gun to alert him to stop, but still he didn't stop or surrender. When he came closer, the RDF soldier shot and killed him instantly. He was shot 1 bullet below the ear. For all those times he was being asked to stop, he never uttered a word, which made the RDF soldier to think he was an enemy. He was wearing DR Congo military uniform. He might be a DR Congo soldier or an FDLR militant. To get the details of the man was not easy because he didn't have any identification document on him apart from wearing the DR Congo uniform. After being shot, we tried to search him, but he didn't have any document on him and he wasn't in possession of a firearm. He was only wearing a DR Congo military uniform, black boots, and DR Congo military sweater. Captain Nzabarinda says the DR Congo soldier could have been on a spy mission to assess the status of the RDF base. Attackers part of the DR Congo-based FDLR militia group, comprising of elements blamed for the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, have in the past attacked the Rwandan territory, some claiming the lives of citizens. A team from the expanded joint verification mechanism, a team of military observers set up under a regional framework to monitor security incidents along the DR Congo's eastern border, After being presented the body of the shot man, inspected the Rwanda-DR Congo border, the RDF base, and spoke with the RDF soldier who shot the infiltrator. However, the head of the team declined to speak to the media about the matter.
The Rwanda Revenue Authority has announced that the use of electronic billing machines will soon extend beyond members of the private sector that pay value-added tax. This emerged part of the EBM sensitization campaign that will focus on encouraging clients to ask for receipts in the hope of winning the campaign lottery. We have the story.
People seem to have welcomed the campaigns conducted by the Rwanda Revenue Authority to promote the use of electronic billing machines. People's mindset has changed, and we expect this to continue. This was different from a while ago when people didn't seem to understand the system.
Yeah, nowadays Rwanda people are very aware, so they always ask for the EBM receipt. Yeah, and we are always giving the EBM receipt with each and everything. Yeah, it's an official document, so it's required. So it's required.
There are people with more established businesses who will give you an EBM receipt before you ask for it, but the smaller businesses most won't have EBMs or give you receipts. People are afraid of what they don't understand. Mobilization efforts are still low. However, we believe with added sensitization, the number of machines will increase and also assist traders in conducting audits. Deputy Commissioner General at the Rwanda Revenue Authority in charge of corporate services, Pasco Rugirinhwari Bizimana, said as part of efforts to promote service delivery, the institution would also introduce billing machines for non-VAT payers. What we're doing right now is the provision of machines that can be used not only by people who pay VAT. We're working with people who can develop the system and acquire affordable machines so that everyone with a business can use this machine to offer receipts. The second phase of the EBM promotion campaign will entail a lottery for clients that will consist of various prizes to encourage consumers to ask for EBM receipts upon purchases. Currently, a little over 13,000 businesses of the 16,000 registered to pay VAT have acquired EBMs.
Genocide survivors at St. Paul Parish rescued by RPA Inkotanyi soldiers during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi reflect on the 17th of June as the day they were saved, but a third time when others hiding at the St. Famille Parish did not survive, and until today their bodies have not been discovered to receive decent burials.
Gilbert Masengo Rutaisire was 24 years old during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. He remembers living in hiding with many others at the St. Paul Parish, and each day many more Tutsis came to join them in hiding during what he recalls as dark days. We started hiding here on the 15th of April. People were in the hall, in the chapel, upstairs and in the basement. Many Tutsis were hiding here. Times were difficult as the food continued to decrease, and yet people were in the thousands. He says while in hiding, they constantly lived in fear as genocide perpetrators continued to come for people, marching them down to Chinamba to kill them at a place they had called Sende. On the 17th of June, finally RPA Inkotanyi soldiers came to the rescue of people at the St. Paul and St. Famille parishes.
We
were saved by Inkotanyi. Perpetrators found us gone and went to St. Famille. marching those in hiding outside and shooting them. That concrete holds the blood of many of our own. They shot them, and one called General Munyakazi came and shot in the air, alerting them that Minwar was coming. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Tumnine, who held the rank of Major by then, was among those who served Tutsis at St. Paul.
Abagiye Sainte Famille basanze bakinze ku buryo.
Our comrades went to St. Famille and found it closed. They did not believe Inkotanyi would reach them. They knocked and there was no response. We held many discussions hoping to rescue them, but they kept quiet. Those who came in here to take people, it must have been with the help of Habyarimana's soldiers, who must have been inside and refused them to respond, open or send any communication from inside. In the early morning, when this failed, we went with those we had found in order to save their lives. These included elderly women and children, over 2,000 of them. Although retired, Lieutenant Colonel Tumine said patriotism and self-sacrifice guided the RPA soldiers in saving people. The first ability was in our hearts, our determination to save lives. This had always been at the forefront of our mission. We came to liberate the country. We came to liberate people enslaved by an oppressive government, and we had great leadership that stayed close to us. Whether it's genocide survivors of that day or the brave men and women that rescued them, today they all affirm that the country's achievements and development has only been possible owing to the good governance pioneered by the head of state.
Now, he might have survived the genocide of the 1994 perpetrated against the Tutsi in Rwanda, but Musabyimana Albert has a foundation that promotes the welfare of children and other vulnerable people. He says this is his contribution in the reconstruction of the country and a token of thanks to those who stopped the genocide.
Most of Musabyimana Albert's family members were massacred during the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. Only 2 of his siblings are here to tell the story. At only 16 years old, Musabyimana headed a family. Life was hard. I tried living with some families, but the leadership that saved us from the killings gave me a house to live in Chinya village. The inhabitants of Chinya settlement in Gasabo district include vulnerable genocide survivors, child-headed families, genocide widows, among others. That's where well-wishers would find them and give them support in form of food and other household items. However, Musabyimana, then a student of KIST, realized a need to have a hall where the well-wishers would collect their donations. He did advocacy, and the hall was indeed built and commissioned by President Paul Kagame, who also planted a memorial tree in recognition of the efforts. It was not long before Musabyimana Albert founded the Peace and Hope Foundation, which now has a nursery school for children of the genocide survivors and other vulnerable children around the area. Life was hard. Sometimes I would see no hope for me. I had no father, no mother, no relative. I got pregnant unaware. After I gave birth to my baby, I got a school for him. The school so far has about 120 pupils, with 26% of them accessing free education, while the rest make a small contribution to keep it running. Marie-José Mukamana was 17 years old when she got pregnant while in school. Peace and Hope Foundation trained her on reproductive health. I brought my children to study here. I am grateful to Peace and Hope Foundation. It got me from the streets. It counseled me and showed me how to use family planning so I can stay clear of similar problems. The foundation also provides milk to children and advocated for the vulnerable genocide widows to have access to clean water. I used to fetch water in a swamp down over there. Musabyimana Albert is now a father of 3. He says his initiative is a token of appreciation to the leadership that gave him hope and a future.
nareba ku mpande yanjye ku baturanyi banjye ku bantu twaturanye ahangaha nkabona abana babo ntago bajya ku ishuri.
I used to see my neighbors' children not going to school, doing forced labor, and I asked myself, what can I do to make my contribution to the leadership that helped me so much? If someone gives you a cow, you give back. Now, what can I give the one who saved my life, gave me a house? I had good education. How can I repay him? That's when I decided to find a way of improving the livelihood of the children.
Muri Bibiliya mu Baromani 5 nyine handitse ko umuntu ashobora kubabara ariko yagira icyizere mu mutima we akaba yabaho neza.
Peace and Hope Foundation strives to put a smile on the children's face and the population in general. Today, Musabyimana dreams of expanding the school to receive 400 pupils.
Now, a number of citizens in Gikomera sector, Gasabo district, disclosed the crimes and insecurity will reduce after the Rwandan police set up a building to serve them in the sector. Some of the activities that posed threats to the citizens in this sector include use of illegal drugs like marijuana and illicit brew, which were utilized by the citizens. After setting a police station building in their sector, some citizens believe this will empower them and reduce illegalities that were present in their sector.
Before the police station was built, when problems erupted, no police personnel would show up. Instead, the local defense would come, but also late. They would come with no guns, and sometimes the citizens would beat them also.
Before the station, people would fight because of those drugs. You would find people hacking one another, and it would take long for the police in Kabuga to come. And when they arrive, people would already be in a bad condition.
Now that we see this station here, I can say that we have no problem and security is assured.
The Deputy Inspector General Police in charge of administration and personnel, Juvenal Marizamonda, reiterated the need for citizens to cooperate with the police to mitigate crimes. He added that this station will encourage them to curb unlawful acts before they happen. This building we have opened today emphasizes the culture Rwandans have developed of generating solutions by themselves, as we keep encouraging them and His Excellency Paul Kagame to do so. The Vice Executive Secretary Mberabahizi Raymond Chrétien from Gasabo District called for collaboration in sharing information vital to their security for protection of their development. This building is worth 9,800,000 Rwandan francs, even though most of the construction activities were done by the citizens. Students from 5 different countries are readying themselves to study in different universities in the United States of America through Bridge to Rwanda this Friday visited the Chancellery for Heroes, National Orders and Decorations of Honor Institution, also known as Channel. They were encouraged to become heroes by upholding dignity and working hard in their lessons. These students, under the patronage of Bridge to Rwanda from different countries, wanted to visit the Heroes Mausoleum to learn from the Rwandan heroes, especially how they can honor their respective countries. They shared their delight coming to an understanding of their journey of Rwandan heroes.
You know, something great today to come and see the museum for Rwandan heroes. It's something that we have to appreciate because every country has, hero. We have days, we have like big day that is for our heroes, but then we haven't yet put into place like a museum where we can view them, we can come and remember them. Yeah, we don't have, so that's the big difference that Rwanda has and we don't, yeah.
The Rwanda that we see today is because the heroes who fought for it. Wherever I go, I will share about our heroes, and I will come back to join my fellow Rwandans to continue to develop the country.
The Executive Secretary of the Chancellery for Heroes, National Orders and Decoration of Honor urged the students to become heroes, since heroes are not those on the battlefield only. Wherever they are going, they should continue to behave like Rwandans, like heroes. Heroism is not on the battlefield only. Everything we do should be praised by everyone. And we are speaking to them about heroism because they will be representing Rwanda. Gwaka Nicolas, head of research at Chen Rwanda, also explained that the young ones are priority when it comes to teaching about heroism, since they are the future. That's why it's necessary for them to visit Rwanda's Heroes Mausoleum. Bridge to Rwanda Scholars Program helps students who completed their secondary education to get scholarship to study abroad, especially in the United States of America. They now have about 175 students studying in different years. Welcome once again, and of course, if you just joined us, you are watching RTV News in English. Now we're crossing over onto the international scene, and we start off in West Africa, in Niger, where Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, is struggling with high unemployment rates and a worsening security situation. Now, according to the United Nations, 65% of Niger's population is under the age of 24 years, but with scarce job opportunities, many have risked their lives to cross the desert and the Mediterranean in search of a better life in Europe. We have a story courtesy of Al Jazeera.
It's one of the poorest countries in the world, and a youthful one. According to the United Nations, 65% of Niger's population is under the age of 24. But jobs are scarce. Many have risked their lives to cross the desert and the Mediterranean in search of a better life in Europe. Not Rashida, she's a university student and shares a room with her cousin in the capital, Niamey.
The majority of the youth I meet say they want the opportunity to leave the country. They believe that things will be better abroad, that they'll earn lots of money. But if they stay here, things will always be the same, always awful. The young people have no hope. They need to have enough hope to believe that it's worth staying here in this country and building it up.
Security is also a concern, especially in the region of Difa, which is in the southeast, close to the border with Nigeria. The Nigeria-based armed group Boko Haram has extended its reach into Niger and launched attacks here. The UN says there are approximately 250,000 people displaced in Difa. Mamane Kakatuda is a radio host who recently visited the area.
Sometimes for only little money and because they have no jobs, young people decide to join Boko Haram because it is a question of life or death. This is a serious issue, I tell you, and I think the entire political class, no matter if the majority, the opposition, social actors or NGOs, they must create the conditions to tackle the problems of this youth. Otherwise, I assure you, everything we have achieved will be lost.
Back in the capital, some of the unemployed guys have formed street communities called fadas, where they talk about their problems and try to help each other out. But they admit there is little to do here. If there is no work, they'll sit on the side of the road and drink tea, hoping that someone will pass by to give them an opportunity. Stephanie Decker, Al Jazeera.
Now, Eritrea says its forces killed more than 200 Ethiopian soldiers in fighting on their border last week. The government of the Ethiopian disputes those numbers, while the UN says it has no way of monitoring what is actually happening on the ground.
An uneasy truce has held along this 1,000-kilometre buffer zone for 16 years. An agreement between Eritrea and Ethiopia back in the year 2000 brought an end to 2 years of war that killed at least 70,000 people. But the pact didn't resolve their differences. The two nations have been feuding over their border since Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia in 1993. Many, including the UN, fear this outbreak of fighting is threatening this fragile peace. Eritrea says its rival fired the first shots, but Ethiopia has levelled the same accusation.
It was a function of our frustration as a result of so many provocations. But that last shot by Eritreans was the last straw, as it were. So I'm not saying it was us who who shot the first salvo. It was the Eritreans who did it.
Both countries have a long history of trading accusations, of attacks and of backing rebel groups. Ethiopia hasn't accepted the decision of a border boundary commission that handed over the hotly contested town of Badme to Eritrea. With just 5 million people, Eritrea is dwarfed by its neighbour, which has a population of around 96 million. That perceived threat is part of Eritrea's justification for open-ended compulsory military service for hundreds of thousands of its people.
Our land continues to be occupied. There is continued threat from Ethiopia, so we have no alternative but to prolong the national service.
The Commission has concluded that Eritrean officials have committed crimes against humanity.
It's the operation of Eritrea's military service that led in part to a recent UN report accusing the government of crimes against humanity. It alleged rape, torture and forced disappearances and said 400,000 people were being enslaved and forcibly conscripted into its military. Eritrea accused Ethiopia of orchestrating evidence. The UN has called for restraint but admits it has no way of knowing what's actually happening on the ground. It withdrew its peacekeepers in 2008, saying Eritrea had limited their movements. Both countries say they are committed to peace, but this latest fighting shows just how tense things are along the disputed border in the Horn of Africa. Miriam Nahond, Al Jazeera.
Nearly 4 weeks after the start of a US-backed offensive, Iraq's army says it has recaptured the main government headquarters in central Fallujah.
Nearly 4 weeks after the start of a US-backed offensive, Iraq's army says it's recaptured the main government headquarters in central Fallujah. The military claims to have raised the Iraqi flag above the building. A spokesman for the US-led coalition, however, said while close, Iraq's security forces were still not in control of the compound. The latest reported advances into Fallujah by government forces come as thousands of internally displaced people continue to flee the besieged city. This woman said, "We lived in fear and starvation. Our kids were frightened when ISIL was in control. They arrested the men, they beat them and hurt them. And any woman that stood up to them, they would grab her hair and insult her. They showed us no dignity." Witnesses say ISIL has started allowing thousands of civilians trapped inside Fallujah to leave. The sudden exodus is reported to have overwhelmed displacement camps already filled beyond capacity. Tens of thousands of civilians are still thought to be trapped in the city, with the fighting causing mounting casualties.
Now, as we come to the last story of tonight's bulletin, now for those of you preparing for weddings, would you consider a wedding dress made out of toilet paper? No, yes, maybe. The 12th annual toilet paper wedding dress contest in New York showcased wedding dresses made out of toilet paper. We have the video courtesy of Reuters. I hope some of you are not changing their minds already. Now, that story brings us to the end of tonight's bulletin. But before we leave, let's take a look at the headlines. World Bank has extended a loan of 15 billion Rwandan francs to the government of Rwanda, which will be used in supporting centers of excellence in universities. Workers at Gisozi Carpentry in Gasabo district rant their frustrations due to lack of health insurance in their work. Rwanda Revenue Authority says the plan is on the way for all traders to give receipts using electronic billing machines. Elsewhere, unemployment of Niger's youth is forcing them to cross the Mediterranean Sea in search of green pastures in Europe. Well, thank you so much for staying tuned. Do continue to enjoy our TV programming. As for me, enjoy your weekend and have a blessed night.